Hi and welcome. I'm going to go turn on my camera for a bit here. Hi, how's everyone doing? My name is Colleen. I'll get to that in just a minute. Who am I? Who are any of us, really? All right, so welcome. Thank you all for being here. We're so excited to have you. So, this is our first webinar in a series of new educational webinars on body system physiology and supportive therapeutics. And oh my goodness, the response to this webinar was phenomenal. In less than 24 hours, we hit our cap of 1,000 participants. And it's a testament to how much we all gain from being a part of this special community, right? So I will be your guide today. My name is Colleen Bingham. I am senior copywriter here at Dr. Morse. And I've been writing a lot of educational content here, so you've probably been reading some of my recent blog posts. I'm also an alumni of Dr. Morse International School of Healing Arts, and I'm a certified herbalist. I've been studying herbology for the last 13 years, and so luckily I have made my way into being able to channel my passion for herbalism into a career. Very grateful for that. I'm also an educator at the Institute I'm an educator at an Institute for Herbology in Sonoma County, California, and I'm a natural product formulator. And I'm also joined here today with Jen B and Sarah. So if you have been with us for a while, if you've ever called in for support, you have probably talked with either one or both of these incredible women. They've been part of the support team here at Dr. Morse for 10 years. 10 plus years, actually. Jen B is our brand manager and Sarah's our customer support supervisor. And they will be here, especially at the end. Jen B is going to be off mute and we will be tackling some of your questions together. She knows so much about this brand, so definitely want her expertise during the Q&A at the end. Great. Okay, so what brought us all here today, right? We have alumni here, we have our retail partners here, and we have customers here. So it's an incredible opportunity for all of our community to join in one spot and learn about the lymphatic system. So we're going to do the deep dive in just a minute. But first, why are we here? What brought us all together? It's this guy, Dr. Robert Morse, whose life's work is to unlock the body's natural ability to heal by supporting its regenerative detoxification process. For over 45 years, Dr. Morse has been educating humanity on how to remove obstructions in the physical and energetic channels connecting body, mind, and spirit through proper diet and the support of his transformative herbal supplement formulas. Pretty cool. That's right. Direct quote from Dr. Morse. We are here to become the masters of our own healing journey, right? It's so much more than just taking an herbal supplement. We are here because we believe that the body is intelligent and we just need to get it back to that baseline. So we're going to learn about the lymphatic system today, and then we're going to learn about how these herbal formulas can support it, but also what we can do on our day-to-day with therapeutics and whatnot, just to kind of give you this whole picture of what it means to be on this journey, to be on the Dr. Morse healing path. So a little bit of housekeeping before we jump in. We will have a Q&A going throughout the entire webinar. So if you look at the top right of your screen, you should find a little ellipses or the 3 dots. And if you click that, there should be an option for the Q&A. So go ahead and look for that right now and try it out. We, of course, won't be able to get to everyone's questions because we have such an amazing turnout for this event. But we definitely, Sarah and Jen are both going to be kind of constantly trying to keep up with the questions coming in. And then we will reserve 10 minutes at the end for more questions. Okay, great. But I do encourage you to stick around. Although you will be emailed a recording of this, and we will also be emailing you a blog that's basically everything you're going to be learning today. We encourage you to stick around until the end of the webinar because we will be revealing some discount codes for everyone. Whether you're a customer, a retailer, or an alumni, you will be getting a portion of the cost of every formula we discuss here today will be taken off of your total. So that'll be a 24-hour discount code. So definitely stick around till the end if you can. Okay, and so let's talk about today's agenda really quickly. Here's what we'll be talking about. We'll start with the lymphatic system anatomy and physiology. So what is the lymphatic system and how do we break it down into its component parts? And then we will bring in Dr. Morse's protocols. We'll specifically be doing a virtual lymphatic herb walk. One of my favorite things to do with online herb courses is to just go visit the plants and learn more about them, and then talk about which formulas they show up in the Dr. Morse line. And then we will also, if there's time, touch on additional therapeutics that you can do every day to support the lymphatic system. Okay. So without any further ado, we can all take a collective deep breath and get started. And really quick, just to make sure folks are seeing what I'm seeing, I'm actually going to stop my screen share and restart it because we noticed that that happened. Some people weren't able to see the presentation if they joined late. So let's do that real quick. Hopefully after that, everyone will be able to see it just fine. Okay. And we're back. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Can I get a thumbs up from my support team?
I can see.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. The lymphatic system. And so before I get into the nitty-gritty of anatomy and physiology, it's heady stuff. Let's just talk about what the Dr. Morse perspective, right? We all love and resonate with his teachings because it's not so much about how things function on this really minute level. It's about how we are the embodiment, we are the physical embodiment of creation, right? So we are the microcosm of the macro, whether you're looking at the physical human body or the earth body or the galaxy or the solar system. Well, not in that particular order. We are all just kind of mirroring each other, right? That's what this is. And so the lymphatic system, if you look at this image, it's the waterways of the body. It's the tributaries, the streams, the rivers, the lakes, and finally dumping back into the ocean of our circulatory system. Our lymphatic fluids are literally washing over the tissues of our body to rinse them. And so, with a healthy, functioning lymphatic system, we are maintaining that flow. So, isn't that a lesson in life? Is just working on keeping the flow. Yes. Okay. All right. Getting distracted by some of that. All right. So, let's talk about the anatomy and physiology of the lymphatic system. So, the lymphatic system is actually a component part of a larger system, which is the immune system. And so it kind of gets sometimes forgotten. I remember when I learned about the lymphatic system in my life, way after I, heard about my immune system my entire life. So it's a very critical piece of the immune system. And I will show you why right now. Our immune system is nowhere in specific, right? It's just protecting us from and maintaining health on a day-to-day basis. It's doing it right now. We have all these barriers within the immune system that are built up. So we have the physical barrier of the immune system, that's our skin. So that's basically first line of defense, right? If something is too big to penetrate it, it can't get past. So we're blocked from a lot of stuff. Thank you very much, skin. And chemical level, the immune system is working because it's working all those acids and mucuses and enzymes in the body. And those are helping to capture and remove and destroy and neutralize any foreign unwanted organisms. But then you have your cellular immunity. These are all of your immune cells. Most of those are produced by and housed in the lymphatic system, as you can see here. The lymphatic system produces immune cells. It transports immune cells on the immune cell highway, which is the lymphatic system. And it houses immune cells in the nodes and the organs, the thymus and the spleen. So we are going to get into all that in detail right now, but just wanted you to see kind of the bigger picture. Okay, immune system, lymphatic system, they're very integral and one could not exist without the other. All right, so let's break it down. We're going to talk, we're going to start at the very beginning. Where does lymphatic start? Where does it go? And how does it work? So first off, we have our capillary beds. In your body right now, just imagine this, there's an estimated 10 billion capillary beds in the body. So this is the zone That's where all of the blood and lymph meet in the interstitial space. You see this interstitial space right here. So this is where all of our cells and our tissues, our extracellular matrix, that's all hanging out here, making us who we are. And these are these capillary beds where this change is happening. So 20 liters a day of blood plasma passes through circulation, right? And of that 20 liters of blood plasma, only 17 liters returns to circulation. So 3 liters of fluid stay in this interstitial space, okay? It's the lymphatic system's job to mop that up. Now, if you have a sluggish or slow or non-working lymphatic system, imagine what that looks like. You have 10 billion zones in your body where you have all this fluid retention, where you aren't able to reabsorb it into lymphatic flow because your lymphatic system is compromised. So you can imagine the pressure that that creates. In fact, it's one of the jobs of the lymphatic capillaries to regulate blood pressure, because all that extra 3 liters of liquid is being mopped up essentially by this lymphatic capillary and brought into lymphatic flow, right? And so it shouldn't remain in that interstitial space for very long. And because a lot can happen in the tissues of our body, as we all have learned through Dr. Morse's teachings, you can have, well, acidosis is a big one, right? And you also have just damaged cells. You have whatever foreign pathogens or unwanted organisms might have shown up in the interstitial space. If the lymphatic system is working and fluid, then you will have the absorption of that into lymphatic flow and the essentially the removal of that from your body. It is an eliminatory pathway. That's a big one. Love, love, love those eliminatory pathways of the body. So a little closer look here. What does the lymphatic capillary look like? How is it built? It is a single cell wall thick of these flattened epithelial cells, okay? So those are, in between each one is this small permeable gap. And in those gaps is where all of that interstitial fluid comes in. And what is absorbed into lymphatic flow? Let's see, that would be the job of the lymphatic fluid. So the lymphatic fluid is made up of a mixture of about 90% water and 10% solutes. You've got, and the solutes are really what we're talking about here. So somehow those solutes get through those tiny little spaces in between those endothelial cells. And we're talking proteins, cellular waste products, dissolved gases, and hormones. And lymph may also contain bacterial cells that are picked up from diseased tissues and the white blood cells that are fighting these pathogens, right? So big one there. We have these tissues in the body. We need to promote their flow. How do we do that? Believe it or not, our herbs are incredibly supportive to stimulating that flow of lymphatic fluid on this capillary level. And we'll get into that in a little bit later. All right. So from the lymphatic capillaries, you move into the lymphatic venules, and then those get even larger and become the lymph vessels, right? So the vessels they look like this. They're still made of a single layer of endothelial cells, and they have valves, a series of segmented valves. So lymphatic fluid can only move unidirectionally through these vessels. It can only go up, and then it passes this valve, and the valve shuts behind it, so it gets stuck here and it can't go backwards. That's awesome that that works that way, but guess what? Lymphatic vessels, same as veins returning blood to the heart, neither of those vessels have a pump. So it is actually our job, our conscious job, to move our body in order to pump this system, okay? So if you want fluid to flow from your legs back to your heart, you have to actually move up, get up and move. We'll talk about that more later with the therapeutics as well, but skeletal and smooth muscle contractions are what pumps lymph. The breathing, the diaphragm also moves lymph. You have a huge collecting basin right here for lymphatic fluid. And in order to pump that up to these ducts, you have to breathe. You have to take a big breath in to pump lymphatic fluid. Can you feel it doing it right now if you take a nice big breath? Pretty cool. All right. So then you have the node. The vessels take the lymphatic fluid to the node. And the node is where all the action happens. Dr. Morse calls this the septic tank. It's where you have tons of B and T cells, and what they're doing is they are neutralizing, killing, and processing all of these potential bacterium, unwanted organisms that end up in the node. You might have some inflammatory response here because if we are immunocompromised in some way, what it's triggering here in the node is inflammation to encourage more blood to flow to the node. It actually opens up the capillaries. It's a capillary dilator or a vasodilator. And so with more blood coming in, you have more of your immune cells entering the node. So if you do have a seasonal discomfort, you'll find that you might find some inflammation in the node. It just means that the lymphatic system is doing its job. So yeah, lots of killing of cells and viruses and toxins. Really important spots. The septic tank, it's like basically the water washing through a bunch of gravel in order to filter it, right? Granted, it's not gravel, it's not hard, it's not dense, it's cells, it's cellular, but you can just kind of imagine it's almost washing through cellular bubbles and cleansing itself on its way to be returned to circulation. And then you have the ducts. The lymphatic ducts are very critical. It's the final frontier of the lymphatic system. It's where all the lymphatic fluid ends up before it enters circulation again. So you have your right torso and your right arm and your right side of your head are all emptied into the right lymphatic duct. And this is the right subclavian vein that goes into the heart. And then you have the entire rest of your body. Again, over here, we have the cisterna chyli. This is where this thoracic duct really starts. And that's where the diaphragm really helps to pump all of the whole left side of your body, all these clusters of nodes that you have in all these places, back to the subclavian vein to re-enter circulation, okay? And there's a little closer up version there of what that looks like. This is your left side, your thoracic duct, and your right duct. And again, remember, you will have the option to revisit these slides. You have glands, okay? You've got the thymus gland and the bone marrow. So these are the lymphatic organs. These are what do most of the producing of the immune cells, okay? So the thymus gland or the thymus gland, not only does it produce T cells, T lymphocyte or T cells, it also is connected to the endocrine system because it uses a hormone signaling process in order to produce immune cells. So there's a whole connection here between the thymus gland and the endocrine system. And then the red bone marrow as well is producing both B and T cells. So pretty critical pieces of the lymphatic system. And then the lymphatic organs, the spleen, the tonsils, the adenoids also are, so here we have the tonsils and the adenoids. Notice that, talk about the first line of defense for invading organisms. We have lymphatic tissue right here at the back of our throat, so that anything that we breathe or eat in, we might trigger an immune response or a lymphatic response just to protect us right at that first line of entry. And then here we have our spleen. Okay, and so the bigger picture here, I think you're kind of getting the idea, right? But the lymphatic flow is really important to maintain not only that pressure homeostasis on that and that cellular capillary level, but also the lymphatic fluids then have to go back into circulation. So when I say that they dump into the subclavian vein and go back to the heart, that means that they still haven't been eliminated from the body. You still have lymphatic fluid being pumped through the body. So you then have that flowing to the liver and the kidneys, and those have to be working properly in order for them to identify and remove that waste from the body. Say, oh, this is this is processed lymphatic fluid. It's time to send this out. So your liver has to be really ready to go, and your kidneys have to also be like ready, on the ready. So that's why Dr. Morse is always talking about using multiple supplements to support these areas, to wake up the liver, to wake up the kidneys, and to wake up the lymphatic system in order to ensure that every part of this flow of the removal of elimination from the body, the removal of toxins from the body or accumulated waste, that each part of it is doing its job and working as this beautiful orchestrated dance. Okay. Great. Okay. So on that note, we are going to dive into the herbal therapeutics, and we're basically going to start our virtual herb walk here in a moment and meet some of these herbs that are so wonderfully supportive to the lymphatic system, supporting healthy lymph flow. I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay. A lot of information in a very short period of time. I hope you're all enjoying it. Luckily, you'll have the recording so you can go back and revisit it over and over and over again. You'll know the lymphatic system like the back of your hand. So here are the formulas that we will be offering you a discount on at the end of this. And not only that, but they are all of the formulas that really work well to support this system. So you have lymphatic system 1 through 4. That's kind of a no-brainer. We'll talk about some of the most critical herbs in those formulas in just a minute. But Ultimate Immune Tonic is a great option here because the immune system is the larger system that we're talking about here, right? And this Ultimate Immune Tonic has Schizandra berry and all these, and deer antler, all these other wonderful ingredients in it that are supportive. They help to build immune system function over time. Okay, so kidney, bladder 1 through 4 also make a lot of sense because once the lymphatic fluids are dumped back into circulation, the kidney has to be functioning properly in order for that lymphatic fluid to be removed from the body as waste. And GI renew, same thing. The liver, the digestive tract all need to be functioning properly so that we can get this processed cellular waste out of the system. Adrenal support, we talked about how the thymus gland is really connected to the adrenal system, right? Or the endocrine system. So adrenal support's a good one there. Blood support, because we're talking circulation, the blood needs to be flowing properly in order to even bring all that fluid into the interstitial space so that it can then be brought back into circulation again from the lymphatic flow. Heal All is just a wonderful, everyone loves it. And it's just great for supporting everyday maintenance of just healthy, happy cells. And lung detox, although I wouldn't say lymphatic is super tied into the lung, it's all still totally connected. The lungs are bringing in that oxygen that's oxygenating all of that interstitial space. And also it's helping as an eliminatory organ because it removes carbon dioxide from the body. It also removes anything that's caught in respiratory mucus, that first line of defense. Okay, let's meet some herbs. So first we're going to talk primary herbs. These are the herbs that are kind of the most indicative to supporting the lymphatic system, the ones my go-to lymphatic herbs. So we're talking about a category of herbal action called an alterative. There's actually a great blog that I wrote recently all about alteratives, and what they are herbs that support the eliminatory systems of the body. They help their function, they bring them oxygen. They're just these great herbs for supporting the kind of mission and vision of Dr. Morse, right? So that's why they're in so many of his formulas, because they're helping to support these eliminatory body systems, okay? And so a subcategory of an alterative is a lymphatic. And so we are talking specifically about lymphatic herbs today. So the first one we're going to talk about is mullein. And first, before we dive into mullein, I want to show you what a monograph is, okay? So this is a herbal monograph. It's a very short one. There are whole books written on the information on herbs, but we're going to just do some basics here. You have the common name, and then you have the scientific binomial name, which is the genus and the species of the plant. Okay, Verbascum thapsus in this case. We have the plant family, the Scrofulariaceae family, which is the figwort family, another amazing herbal alternative that supports the eliminatory channel from the liver to the skin. And parts used is always written on a monograph. For mullein, that's the leaf, flower, and root. Habitat just tells you kind of where it grows and where it's naturalized. Mullein is everywhere. It is really good. I mean, you should see the amount of seeds. If you don't know mullein, go check one out. If you just shake it in the fall, you'll have seeds, just thousands, millions of seeds just covering the ground. In fact, it's one of the first herbs I see coming up after a big forest fire, which is really interesting because mullein is really great at helping to expectorate the lungs, helping to lift and remove some of that mucus from the lungs, which is something that we all need after a forest fire, right? So really interesting that mullein's one of the first ones. You'll just see the entire landscape spotted with mullein plants as the first thing to regrow. Primary constituents of mullein. So this section, take with a grain of salt. Again, we're all about holistic health here. And so this is really getting down to the finite, isolating constituents within the plant. But it also helps people like me who are always asking, why are we saying this about this herb? Why do we think this herb is so great for the system? We can isolate these few or identify these few very prominent constituents or phytochemicals in the plant and say, that's why it's helpful. So let's talk about some of these. Polysaccharides are a type of starch. Most plants have some form of polysaccharide. They're very prevalent in mullein leaf. And not only are they polysaccharides, but they're mucilaginous polysaccharide, which is a type of polysaccharide that collects and holds water molecules. So it's collecting and holding water molecules until it swells to the point that it's thickened the water. So that's really helpful for nourishing the tissues throughout the digestive tract. It's running over the tissues in the body and it's hydrating them and it's leaving this kind of gelatinous mucilage. It's called demulcent in the body. It's called emollient topically, right? So it's a demulcent phytochemical. Saponins are super cool. One of my favorites. Oh, I see hands being raised. Unfortunately, I won't be able to take questions, but if you do use the Q&A feature, there top right ellipses on your screen, there's a question and answer feature. So you can go there and type your questions in. If they're not being answered, it's just because we're probably receiving more questions than Sarah and Jen can handle. But thank you for your questions and your curiosity. I know it's really exciting stuff. So saponins are pretty amazing. If you've ever made soap, which I happen to be a soap maker, if you've heard of saponification, it's the merging of cells to make a new cell that is both oil and water soluble. And saponins in nature are the same way. They have an oil-loving and a water-loving part of the molecule. And how this manifests in the plant is if you were to, for example, make a mullein tea or a mullein extract, you would shake the jar and it would create a frothy top because of all those saponins in there. It's all bubbly. And how this kind of manifests in the body is as this scrubby washing sensation, right? It's actually kind of almost bubbly washing, cleansing in that way, which no wonder we love it at Dr. Morse. And it's mildly irritating, believe it or not. Not in a bad way, just in enough of a way to support the flow of the lymphatic fluid. So that's why mullein is a great supportive for gentle lymphatic flow. And then also another great primary constituent here is that mullein has tannins. So check this out. It's got both mucilage and tannins. Tannins are very astringing. A lot of people call them drying. I don't think of them as drying. I think of them as awakening. What they're doing is they're toning tissue. They're getting tissue to, especially lax tissue that's kind of sluggish, isn't maybe working. Think about those capillary beds. Maybe there's some fluid that's kind of stuck down in that capillary bed. Tannins help to support with this astringing quality, the almost wringing out of those capillary beds by tightening the tissue, giving it more function, supporting its function, if that makes sense. So astringents are great. We're going to talk about more astringents in a little bit. And then for every monograph we'll talk about, there will be an indications bit. I've basically covered the indications of this plant by explaining its primary constituents. So I won't go into that right here, but just so you know, mullein shows up in lymphatic system 1, heal all caps, and lung detox. Okay, red clover. Red clover is in the pea family, the Fabiaceae family, and I love this picture of red clover because it's really good for helping to identify this in nature. Granted, it grows a lot of places. It grows wild in meadows and in sandy soils, and it's used often as a cover crop because it's so great at fixing nitrogen in the soil. So it's a good one to kind of throw out there in the fall to restore soil. But this little milky V on the leaf is a great sign that you have found red clover. And then this beautiful pink color of the red clover ball of flowers. This is actually all individual. If you don't know botany, not one flower, it's actually hundreds of little flowers in here, each one doing its own seed production. Pretty fascinating. And with the doctrine of signatures, which was discussed recently in one of the blogs, where nature sometimes emulates the body system that it supports, this almost looks like a little lymphatic gland, right? A little lymphatic node, let's say. Red clover is specific for supporting the glands, specifically the lymph glands, and it's because of this cormoran content, which is a flavone. The cormoran content basically, what they're seeing in research is that it binds to proteins in the interstitial fluid and increases waste clearance by macrophages. Rather than moving the lymph, what the cormoran flavones seem to be doing is making it clearer so that the fluid can be reabsorbed into systemic circulation more effectively. Pretty amazing, right? So it's almost helping to thin out the lymphatic fluid. And again, here are the wonderful formulas that you can find red clover in. It also makes a lovely tea. Cleavers. Cleavers was just showcased big time in a recent article I wrote on harvesting or wild edible wild edible weeds growing in your backyard because it is cleaver season right now. At least it is where I live. I live, like I said, in Northern California. And so all over my garden, cleavers is basically climbing over everything else. And I keep it for now because it's such a great springtime tonic. It's great to just take it and juice it. I just like either run it through a juicer or a blender and make a juice of it and put it in ice cube trays. That's a really fun way to do it. Like basically an ice cube is a dose. And it's just so full of wonderful mineral content that's great for restoring the systems after kind of a stagnant winter. So it's just a great springtime herb. And the way that it kind of creeps and crawls and climbs on everything really reminds me of the lymphatic system and how it has all these tendrils that go everywhere. It also is covered in hooks. You maybe are familiar with these little balls the seed balls that it produces because they end up getting stuck on everything. But these little hairs or hooks that it has will allow it to cleave to pretty much anything. And so I think of how that is also helping with that kind of mild irritation throughout the digestive tract and helping to stimulate lymphatic flow. It is a great kind of gentle lymphatic and nutritive herb that's found in lymphatic 2, adrenal support, kidneys and bladder 2, and kidneys and bladder 3. And let's not forget, it's also an amazing diuretic. Generally, anything that's really high in minerals is going to be a great diuretic because what that healthy mineral complex is doing is stimulating kidneys to process better, basically helping kidneys to maintain their mineral homeostasis in the body and the blood. So yeah, we love cleavers, and Dr. Morse loves cleavers. They're in many of his formulas. And chickweed, another one that is a big time VIP here at Dr. Morse. Chickweed is such a sweet little herb. It's kind of one of these sweet, gentle, but with such a big impact herbs, right? It's another great springtime tonic that's very short-lived, at least where I live. It gets really hot here, I suppose. So it gets really hot and dry, right? So if you live somewhere that's a little bit lush for longer, you might have a longer chickweed season. It's in the purslane family. So if you're familiar with herbs in that family, it's lots of hydration, lots of wetness inside of these leaves. In fact, if you chew on it, you can already taste the mucilage. So again, we're revisiting those mucilaginous polysaccharides here, and the cormorant and the saponins. You see it hits all three of my favorite all three of my favorite constituents or phytochemicals for supporting lymph flow. It's pretty cool. So no wonder it's in lymphatic 1, kidney 2 and 4, GI renew 0, GI renew 1. It's a pretty cool little plant. Not to be confused with scarlet pimpernel, has a very similar leaf structure, but this has white flowers. Scarlet pimpernel has pink flowers. And the way you can always identify chickweed is when you hold it up to the light, you will see one thin line of hairs just running along one side of the stem. That's all. So you'll see that right there and you'll know I found chickweed. Yay. Okay, and finally, this is our last lymphatic herb in the lymphatic category, and it is poke, and it is a big one. It's a powerful, powerful herb that we must give much respect. Why? Poke is a low dose herb. Poke does a lot, and it doesn't take a lot to do it. If you take too much poke, you will end up basically liquefying everything in your body. And so you will have liquids coming out of every orifice that you have. So you have to be really careful with the dosing on this one. And yet it is so amazing. It's the root that's used in herbal supplements and herbal extracts, and a little bit goes a long way. Really, it's one of those lymphatic herbs where if you find that like the stagnancy of your situation is not really moving well with anything else, it's time to try a little bit of poke because it can give it that extra poke, I suppose. Yeah, so in some cultures, and I know in the deep south, folks actually do take the leaves from poke and they blanch it multiple times and discard the water because it's so toxic, but they do eventually cook poke down into an edible food. But I would not suggest doing that if you have other easier to eat leafy greens like kale and chard. Not really worth it if you ask me. And it's fun to pick the berries and use them to stain your lips with a little lip stain. That's fun too. So poke is in lymphatic system 1, 3, and 4. So it's really an incredible herb for supporting the lymphatic flow. And that's why Dr. Morse put it in 3 of the 4 lymphatic formulas. Okay, I could go off on poke forever. Moving on. So I'm just checking in to make sure everyone can still hear me. Maybe can one of my co-hosts give me you're doing good?
Yep, you're doing good. We're having an issue with the chat. We see hands raised. I can't answer questions at the moment, but we're not ignoring you. We're working on it, but just keep going. We can hear you fine.
Is there
You're
anything
doing
I need to
awesome.
click on my end?
Not too sure. So we're working on it.
Remember, this is our
Guys,
first webinar of the series.
yeah. If I know a few people, I see a few more hands raised. If you want to fire off a question or your question to my email, jenb@dmhhc.com, go ahead and fire them off. I see more hands raising. Shoot the email over to me. Just do it. I want your questions. So let's go.
Let me just
Go
check out
for
the
it.
Q&A real quick and see what we got here. Okay, yeah, I do see questions coming in on my end. Are you not able to see them, Jen?
No.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, if they want to email them to me, if they can take a moment, that's fine. I will have that open and ready to go.
Sorry about that, folks. Learning curve. Okay. Back to what I was saying. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to go into secondary herbs. So these are supportive herbs. They kind of, as you're formulating, as Dr. Morse was formulating these products, he's thinking, okay, primary action, lymphatics, secondary action, demulcency, vulneraries. Vulneraries are really great at both topical and internal endothelial support, so helping to support the healing of the skin. And then you have astringency. We talked about that earlier, the tannins, the tightening, the tonifying of the tissue, and immunosupportive herbs, because we are, after all, hanging out in the immune system when we talk about lymph. Okay. So plantain is a big one here. It's a really great one at least in North America. It's very easy to find this herb. In fact, there are over 200 species of plantain in the Plantago genus, and about 35 are native and non-native species are growing in North America. It kind of pops up everywhere. In fact, indigenous folks have given it the common name white man's foot because it seemed everywhere the settlers landed and walked, there was plantain in their trail. It contains allantoin, which is a great one for supporting the sloughing of skin. It's also just really great at helping to build connective tissue. So allantoin is really cool and makes sense why plantain would be so great for the skin. Tannins and flavonoids, and it also has some mucilage. So again, a lot like mullein. I guess I didn't touch on this when we were talking about mullein, but I liken plants like this that have both mucilage and astringency to be mucomodulators. So they're good at kind of keeping tonality going, whether it is that you have a very dry state and you need to hydrate, or if you are overly moist and you need to dry out. Both of those, plantain and mullein, are both great options to support just maintaining that mucilage homeostasis and modulating the mucilage. So that's why I think it's just got so many great supportive indications for the digestive tract. So kind of bringing in some digestive components to our lymphatic support picture, because remember, the digestion has to be there to support of the lymphatic waste from the body. Okay, so lymphatic 1 and 3 both have plantain, chem metal detox, blood support, and heal all T. Okay, and so then talking astringency, right? So yarrow is just kind of one of my go-tos. It's in lymphatic system too, and other products but we won't be offering discounts on those. But yeah, the leaf and the flower are used. And if you are a landscaper and enjoy growing this plant, you probably know how many beautiful color variations there are of yarrow. So when it comes to traditional herbal remedies, Achillea millefolium is the most commonly used plant. It's in the Asteraceae family. It's a huge family, the daisy family. And millefolium kind of speaks to how the leaflets have millions of tiny leaves coming off of them. So that's one way you can identify that plant. So yeah, really high in tannins and really known for its ability as a styptic. In fact, as far as first aid kits go, it's my go-to to have some yarrow powder, or if I'm out and about and I have like a cut or something that's bleeding and I want to slow the bleeding, it's amazing how quickly yarrow can staunch the flow of blood. But it's also just really great as as a blood modulator as well. So it really works on the bloods of the body, and it also has specific affinity for the uterine area. And so let's see, I think that's all I want to say about yarrow, except that it also has a really cool constituent in its volatile oils. I mean, it smells really good. A volatile oil is basically the essential oil of the plant. The chamazuline and the azulene mean that when you distill yarrow, you actually get a blue essential oil, which is really beautiful. And blue is always indicating that it's nice and cooling. Okay, bayberry, another great astringent herb that we have here. Notice the clustering of the bayberries on this, not to be confused with other look-alike plants. This is a great herb for supporting atonic tissue. It's kind of almost interchangeable with yarrow. You see it in lymphatic system 2 and 4. It's more common, whereas yarrow is really common out here on the West Coast. It's native to marshes and sandy swamps. So it's more of a Floridian herb. So no wonder it ends up in so many of Dr. Morse's formulas. So we see the tannins here. We see flavonoids. So it's great. Got some antioxidant content here. And it has resins and gums. We're going to talk about those more in just a minute. Bayberry. So now we're going into the immunosupportive herbs, right? Echinacea, which is in lymphatic 2 and 3, and chemetal detox. So all parts of this plant are used, root, leaf, and flower. This is actually one that is native to the prairie regions of North America, west of Ohio. And angustifolia is one that's harder to cultivate. It's more of something that you want to find in nature, as far as wildcrafting goes, sustainable wildcrafting. One of the coolest, I would say the two coolest phytochemicals I can point out here are the alchemides, which have a tingly sensation on the tongue. And a lot of traditional herbal kind of lore about echinacea attests that that's how it's so supportive to kind of stimulating immune system function, is those alchemides are somewhat irritating. So as they tickle and kind of zap, and you wash them over those lymphatic tissues at the back of the throat, they actually kind of mount in a lymphatic response. So it's awakening the lymphatic system. Hey, something's here. It's just kind of calling in the troops, let's say. Okay. But it also contains inulin, which is a really cool little prebiotic that's really great for the gut. So that's echinacea. And then another way that we can really support the immune system is with resins, because resins are great at helping to support a compromised immune system. They're really good at kind of stimulating and supporting the job of the immune cells to, kill foreign bodies, or I forget what I was going to say. Unwanted organisms, that's what I was looking for. So it's really good at helping to mount that defense against unwanted organisms. Really resinous plant. You touch this plant when it's thriving and in its season, and it still feels like it's dead and drying because there's very little water content in this plant. It survives in the desert regions of the southwestern part of the United States, and it can propagate up to like hundreds of square miles. It's incredible. I've driven roads in Southern California where it's just chaparral as far as the eye can see in every direction. And it's the resinous smell of it is really incredible. It actually makes a beautiful infused oil as well. Okay, lymphatic system therapeutics, just a few minutes for these. So these are other things that you can be doing to support the lymphatic system flow on a day-to-day basis. So what this guy's holding here is what's called a gua sha. Maybe you're familiar with these. They're really big right now in the face care industry, but they are actually a tool from a long time ago. We'll talk about them more in a minute. Okay, so we're talking hydration first and foremost, right? Because if we want to maintain those waters and the fluidity of the body, we want to keep solid hydration. And at Dr. Morse, we're not about drinking water. We are about getting your hydration through your fruits, your vegetables, and your teas. So most vine ripe and tree ripe fruits and berries have an alkaline base or hydrating effect. And so those are the ones you're going to want to go to. You can eat them throughout the day to support the fluids of the body. And what's so great about them, unlike water, is that they also contain so much nutrient and mineral content to just help kidney function and acidosis, right? Because they become alkaline when they enter the body. Here is just a great resource. If you don't know about it already, you can go to this URL, basically under our one of the tabs on our website, the collections tab, educational materials. You can get this free downloadable PDF of a lemonade fast. So I'm just letting you know that's there. And then diet. Of course, diet is huge with Dr. Morse. And here's the fasting food guide. These are kind of okay foods, right, to eat, but really as you're working your way up the levels of detoxification to pure water fasting, it's going to take some time to kind of remove and eliminate all these layers of food. But the goal ultimately is to like total purification. One of the best ways to do that is to fast. So water fasting is at the very top because it is the pinnacle of fasting. It's highly spiritual. It's oftentimes, you know, compared to enlightenment or on the way to enlightenment. And we start at the base, right? We start in the brown and we work our way up. And it's more than just a detox journey. It's a spiritual journey. It becomes a part of all of it because it's the physical, it's the emotional, it's the spiritual body that's all getting triggered as we start to slough off some of these relationships that we have to food, some of the chemicals that have been, the processed foods have been altering our chemistry, and we're having to release a lot of that through all this detoxification. So you really can't just use the supplement formulas and have the lymphatic system just go back to the way it should be. It's a lifestyle. You have to continually maintain it with the foods that you're eating. And so here is a food combining chart. We have 2 of these that are both free downloads if you go to the website. So I won't go into it much right now. We don't have time for that, unfortunately. And we are getting into that final 10-minute Q&A. So I just wanted to remind you to move the body. We talked about that pump. So whether it's walking, dancing, stretching, or getting a standing desk at your office, you have to make sure you're doing something every hour at least to move lymph out of the extremities of your body. So maybe we should all stand up for a second and do that. Moving your feet, pump that lymph. Leg elevations I love doing, whether you do it in the sauna or you do it against the, headboard of your bed. Find a spot where you can put your legs at a 90-degree angle and allow your leg, both lymph and blood, to drain. Gua sha is an ancient traditional Chinese medicine tool for moving stagnant lymph. And you always want to move lymph towards the heart, right? Because that's the ultimate end goal of all lymphatic fluid. So this practitioner is doing a great job holding it at a 45-degree angle. And you use the hard edge and you just you kind of just gently rub against the skin and move all of that lymphatic fluid towards these ducts right here. And then there's thymus tapping or thymus tapping. Remember, that's where a lot of these immune cells are produced. This is also that connection between the thymus gland and the adrenal glands, or not the adrenal glands, but the endocrine system. So waking up that connection between, okay, the thymus gland is producing my T cells and it's having to signal the pituitary gland in order to release the hormone that supports the production of the T cells. So you can just tap right here. The thymus gland just below the sternum right here on the chest. You can kind of feel that hard spot right there. Just tap right there. And there's going to be some more resources in the blog post that we're going to send out right after this is over. But if you do want to check out a really cool therapist that's on YouTube who does a lot of lymphatic massage, her name is Massage by Heather. She just has a lot of great spots to do some gentle pumping to support the moving of lymph into drainage, pulling lymph out of the head, things like that. So I'm going to have Jen come off mute because it sounds like we've had a whole smattering of people unable to answer or get their questions asked. So what do we do?
Yeah. Well, alternative, I would still encourage all those with your hands raised, or if you have, after seeing the whole presentation, if you have more questions, please use the gorgeous chat to chat with our staff with your questions. Or again, you can email me directly at JenB, that's JENB @dmhhc.com. Or you can email info@dmhhc.com. We do want your questions. We want to know what you thought about the webinar. We always look forward to what you guys have to share, and you always bring that interesting take to it. So please share your questions with us. But the few I did get is, I wonder if you could, Colleen, go back to some of the earlier slides about the lymphatic flow. There was a question, probably someone didn't make it in early enough that they could, that you could just review that, how it passes through the lymphatic ducts and how it actually moves, since it doesn't have that circulation that the veins and the arteries do. So I know you have to scroll back quite a ways.
Yeah,
so
we're here.
Yep. Yep. So it
Yeah,
does.
so the big takeaway, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, go.
It's so weird what happened with the Q&A, because I do have like 4 questions on my Q&A and that's it. Like it just stopped. Thank you, Teams. You're really good at what you do. Okay, so we're using the Teams platform, the Microsoft platform. Okay, so this is the lymphatic vessels. This is how lymphatic fluid moves through the body, and there is no pump. That is correct. There is just a series of valves, and the valves keep the lymph flow from going backwards through the valves. So it's a unidirectional flow of lymph. But as we just talked about in the therapeutics super fast, is that there is no pump. So think about all the lymph in the legs. There's actually a lymphatic zone. Actually, I feel like I kind of missed that slide when we talked about the nodes, these clusters of nodes. The auxiliary nodes are in the armpits, the cervical nodes are in the neck, the inguinal nodes are in the groin, and the mediastinal nodes are in the chest cavity. And there's also a bunch of clusters of nodes behind each knee. So that's where kind of all that movement needs to move out from, or we need to encourage the flow from to move through these vessels, right? And because there is no pump, you have to do it through movement. So when we were less sedentary and we were out, living in caves and running to catch our dinner every night, it wasn't so much of an issue. Lymph was flowing, right? But now that we live more stagnant lifestyles and we don't get up and walk as much and we don't do as much whatever it is that you like to do to move, it's just a reminder that that's kind of what has to happen in order for lymph to move. And then I talked about how this whole thoracic region, where the thoracic duct begins, right here is the diaphragm. So breathing, nice big deep breaths is going to help move lymph up and into, bringing it back. And then of course the gua sha is going to move lymph out of the extremities as well, but so will waving your hands in the air. Yeah, movement. It's pretty key. Hope that answered your question.
Yep. And there was
Question.
Another one related to like the modalities. Do you have a favorite one? And can maybe demonstrate one of your favorites, like the gua sha, because yeah, that might be a little bit helpful.
Well, I can't demonstrate my favorite one because there's just no room, but the leg elevation, the leg elevation is my personal favorite. It's the one that I find the most accessible, right? Because gua sha is great and I have multiple gua shas. I even grabbed them to bring to this webinar and left them on the kitchen table. That's how much I think about gua sha. So it's one of those things where it's like awesome if that's what resonates with you. In fact, you can infuse some of these lymphatic herbs that we talked about. Like if you go back over here, okay, mullein would be a great one to infuse into an oil. Cleavers could be a good oil. Poke root makes actually a really nice oil. Plantain makes a great infused oil. Yarrow makes a nice infused oil. So if you're infusing these into oil, which means you're basically putting all the herbs in some oil and shaking it every day and then straining it out after a couple of weeks, you can use that oil, that lymphatic oil, to put on your skin and then use the gua sha tool to slowly move that lymph using that gua sha tool. But dry brushing is another great way to move lymph, right? So that's just using a dry brush. And still, you're always, always, always moving lymph to the heart. But back to my favorite one, I digress. So leg elevation, 90 degree. I do it in the sauna. So because I just happen to have a sauna at my gym, thank goodness. I would probably be so sad if I didn't have that. We all need to sweat, right? It's another great protocol that Dr. Morse talks about all the time, is sweating. So whether it's a steam room or a sauna or somewhere where you can get hot and sweaty, I just kind of, put my butt up against the wall and then put my legs up high over my head, 90 degrees. So you want a 90-degree angle from your leg to your torso. And then you just hang out there for 10 to 15 minutes. And you can incorporate the gua sha tool into that time, where you can put some nice lymphatic oil on your legs and run that gua sha gently down both your legs. If you're doing gua sha for the first time, I do have to say it can be really intense, especially if you hit your entire body all at once. You can have some adverse reactions but that's that healing crisis that Dr. Morse always talks about, of course. So maybe you think it's a good thing, but also you can just do one extremity at a time for a couple of days, and then you've kind of tackled it all, and then you've got your lymph flowing, and then you can kind of revisit it, and it's just maintenance after that. All right, what other ones?
Well, probably the last one. I know, and I might, you're welcome to add. I might just talk on this one a little bit. Is a common question we
Yeah.
get is how, even though we cannot build out an individual protocol for obviously everyone here, and make personalized recommendations, a common question we get is like where you're starting at, especially with the lymphatic formulas. And probably the majority of people here always know that when you have one of our lymphatic formulas, you want to make sure you have a kidneys and bladder formula with it at all times. And try to keep the Fab 4 in mind when you're structuring the foundation, the basics of any protocol, because it touches on the kidneys, the lymphatic system, the endocrine system, and the GI tract. So that's just something I want to reiterate. And that's also why you structured this presentation with the herbs the way that you did.